It's time to feel what you've been bottling up. Life in rural America isn't easy. The long hours, the constant pressures, the demands of the land, livestock, and family, it all takes a toll. We're tough and we've got grit, but somewhere along the way, toughness started meaning bottling up emotions and powering through. But here's the truth. That strategy, it's not working and it's poisoning us. Maybe you've noticed and maybe you haven't, but the numbers don't lie. We're breaking down and it's showing up in our bodies, our relationships, and in the rising suicide rates in agriculture. You don't have to carry any of it alone. There's another way. If you're ready to stop being weighed down and start moving forward, my one-on-one good movement guidance is now open. Visit the link in the show notes to learn more and see if one-on-one guidance could be for you.
I'll carry you, you carry me, we'll help each other through it. Come on and see, good movement draws good movement.
Welcome to Good Movement Draws Good Movement, the podcast where farmers, ranchers, and rural folks can grow relationally through awareness, understanding, and effective communication. Hey, it's T. I'm your host, and I, along with my guests, will be covering topics related to drawing good movement. Things like self and social awareness, brain science, positive psychology, extending grace, and so much more. We'll share tools that can help you understand why you are the way you are, why others are the way they are, and how you can use that to step out of self-told lies with grace and compassion to draw good movement in conversations, relationships, and life in rural America. Let's go draw good movement. Welcome back to the Good Movement Draws Good Movement podcast. You guys, I am so excited. I know I say this for every guest except Tom, but I mean, I'm excited to have him on too, but I'm so excited for today's guest, who is a great friend. She was the first person to recognize me in public from social media. And that friend is Kiah Twisselman Burchett, better known as Coach Kiah. She is a California cattle rancher turned international motivational speaker on a mission to empower others to love themselves deeper, care for themselves better, and find joy in this messy, beautiful journey of life. Named one of Cowgirl Magazine's top 30 under 30, Coach Kiah uses her authentic vulnerability, witty humor, and infectious energy to show others how to overcome hardships and discover their inner vibrance to become the main characters of their own lives. Welcome, Kiah.
Thanks for having me. So happy to be here.
So that was like your formal intro, but now can you give us a more informal intro of who you are and how you got to where you are today?
Yeah, I would say I am a proud Kentuckifornian. And I say that because I grew up in rural California, middle of nowhere, had to drive an hour to go to the nearest gas station, grocery store, high school. On my family's cattle ranch. I'm sixth generation. My nieces are now the seventh. And with a twist of turns and events, going away to college, moving to Europe for a year, and then landing my first big kid job in Kentucky for the Kentucky Beef Council, and really starting my career in ag communications, I met a Kentucky boy, a Southerner, at the Kentucky State Fair, which is really how every country bumpkin love story begins, I think. You know, like that could be a Hallmark movie. Not to mention, I got an ambush makeover that morning at the state fair by the local news. So like I was looking good the day I met my future husband. Needless to say, lived in Kentucky for a few years, started my entrepreneurship journey while I was living here, and started doing freelance graphic design and social media marketing for ag businesses of all sorts. Ended up convincing my Southern husband to move back to California with me, which is hard to do, friends. So we moved back for 5 years. He worked for our local county farm bureau. And while I did that, I was on this health journey, sharing about all this mindset stuff I was learning about online. And it got picked up by news the summer of 2020. I was in People Magazine, Good Morning America, Access Hollywood, and all of these things. And I really had this platform quite literally blow up overnight, which I know is not the case for everyone. And it kind of gave me this I guess, confidence to lean into the Coach Kiah brand that I had already started on the side, really about pouring into other people and coaching them. And I found that that was really where my heart was. I loved marketing and branding and supporting ad businesses, but I really loved working with the people behind them even more. And so that's when I really began my Coach Kiah journey. And then most recently, my husband imported me back to the South. So we just moved back to Louisville, Kentucky, and I'm still doing my Coach Kiah journey. I am a speaker, I'm a life coach. And I just, more than anything, love people, love helping them get curious about themselves, really learn how to love themselves from the inside out, and live their most authentic lives, separate from any of the shame that we have been conditioned to believe. So that's what I'm really, really passionate about. And that's a little bit more about me informally.
I love it. So you and I met back in 2017 in real life.
Maybe it was. That sounds about right. Yeah. I was working for the Kentucky Beef Council at the time.
And it was at the Nashville. It was when the Cattlemen's Convention was in Nashville.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I remember we went to the Masters of Beef Advocacy, like the social in the evening. And I remember I was with my coworker, Caitlin, at the time. We were walking up to the bar and I look over to my right and there is Faith Family Beef herself. You know how we all think about each other as like, our Instagram handles. And at the time that was your brand. You were Faith Family Beef. And I look over, I was like, oh my gosh. And I told my friend Caitlin about it. I was like, hey, do you recognize her? That's Taryn. And I was like, let's grab our drinks. I'm going to go say hi. And so I walked over to Taryn and she's sitting there with her husband. And I just straight up fangirled.
And it was it was awesome for a lot of ways or a lot of reasons because I got to meet you and you're an incredible human being. And in your formal bio where we talked about your infectious energy, friends, that is legit. Kiah has an infectious energy. But also at that time, I was Faith Family Beef on Instagram and I had a blog and I was spending a lot of time online talking about what we do in ranching and advocating for beef. And Tom was having a hard time with the amount of time that I was spending online. Like he thought I was just playing around on the internet, like quote, playing around on the internet. And then Kiah comes up and she recognizes me. And at that point, he was like, oh, okay, so you're not just playing around on the internet. Like what you're doing is making an impact. And I was like, duh.
Duh. I remember he looked at me dead in the face and he says, you mean to tell me you actually recognize my wife because of the stuff she posts on the internet? And I was like, oh my gosh, of course. She's iconic. Of course I recognize her.
Oh man. But from there, like we continued to meet up at Cattlemen's Convention in real life, beginning of the year, continued our online friendship. And then in recent years, we've gotten to see each other a little bit more because we've coached together at a couple of retreats, and that's been fantastic. And actually, the question that I ask every guest on the podcast, I don't have to ask Kiah because she is the person who had the hilarious misunderstanding about what good movement was. It was 2022, I think. And we were heading back to the airport after coaching at a retreat, our friend Natalie's Rural Rooted retreat. And I was really leaning into this good movement, draws good movement idea and really starting to actually flesh it out and coming out of my slothful nineness into actually doing something about it. And Kiah's like, T, can I just say that whenever you talk about good movement, all I can think about is poop.
I had to tell her. I had to just let her know that that was where my mind went.
And I mean, like, if you have heard Kiah speak before, you know she can't resist a good poop joke.
It's true. And I feel zero shame about that.
But also in that conversation, I was like, yeah, you can tell me that. Like, I don't feel bad about that because it ain't good movement if you have to force it. Like, same.
Same. Oh, yeah. I don't know if it's because I am the youngest in my family and I have two older brothers that I love poop jokes. Like if you've heard me speak at a conference, one of my entire keynotes, like the entire punchline of the keynote is a poop joke. But I believe that making poop motivational might be one of the greatest accomplishments of my life. And also anyone that says they don't think poop is funny is a liar because everyone in the room giggles. Everyone.
Yes, I concur. And I mean, on all fronts, if you don't think poop jokes are funny, you're lying. And that might be, to date, one of your greatest accomplishments is turning poop into motivation.
Thank you.
So I really wanted to have you on the show to talk about something that you and I had talked about a couple of weeks ago, which is what you're calling the quest for joy. So, can you tell us a little bit more about that and the background and what you're working on with the
Yes.
quest for joy?
Yes. And I'm really excited to share, Taryn. So thank you for inviting me to talk about it because this is an idea that I have been ruminating on for years now. And it's still just kind of like this idea that's seated in me. And so honestly, on this podcast, I'm excited to put it into words, maybe for the first time in a public way, besides, of course, when I was talking to you, Taryn. So quest for joy. The place that this first originated, this was back in 2020, I think. I was engaged, getting ready for my wedding out west in California at my family's cattle ranch, and I needed to get my wedding dress hemmed. And so I went to one of these little cow towns nearby. They had a seamstress who did my sister-in-law's wedding dress, and I go in and I meet her, and she is this delightful older woman. I think her store is called Something Blue. And when I go in and I meet her and she's, doing the measurements and all that good stuff, I am just asking her more about her life. And she was so fascinating. She actually was from Southern California. Her early career was in Hollywood fashion. Like she worked with some of the biggest names in Hollywood fashion, lived in Pasadena with her husband, and they just decided that they wanted to have a little bit of a slower paced life. So they moved to this rural town and she just became a little small town seamstress. And she shared with me that her sister at the time was battling breast cancer. And she said that she was so inspired by her sister because her sister told her that every single morning when she woke up, despite this diagnosis that I think any of us would be just shooken by, she said every single morning her sister woke up and decided that she would go on a quest for joy. And when she said a quest for joy, it was less about like, I hope today is a good day. I hope good things happen. And it was more about, I am going to go on a quest. I'm going to seek out the joy that is in this day, regardless of her circumstances, regardless of this life-threatening diagnosis, regardless of anything else outside of her, she was going to choose to seek it out every day. And that story just really sat with me. It really just got me thinking about how many of us go through our lives wanting joy, wanting more happiness in our life, hoping it will fall in our lap and not feeling like we have a whole lot of agency in it. And at the same time, when we do decide that we want to create more joy in our lives, speaking from my own experience, a lot of times we're seeking it in the wrong places. We're thinking that joy comes from certain things outside of us that still leave us feeling empty. And for a lot of my life, my journey and my quest for joy was that I thought that joy was on the other side of a changed body. I had this story in my life for all of my elementary school, high school, college, young adult years that I would be so much happier if I was smaller, if I was thinner, if I had lost this weight. And in my own quest for joy, I went on this, I tried all the diets, all of them failed. And I finally went on this health journey and I ended up losing over 100 pounds in 1 year. And that's what landed me all of this media exposure and kind of helped me build this platform of Coach Kiah. And something that I realized on the other side of that changed body was, oh, joy isn't here either. Joy isn't on the other side of looking a certain way or being in a thinner body. You could be miserable weighing 100 more pounds. You could be miserable weighing 100 less pounds. The joy that I was seeking was not about my external body. It was more about the mindset work that I was doing alongside that changing body. And it's been interesting now on the other side of it, having gained a lot of that weight back, learning how to continue to love myself and now an again expanding body and realizing what joy looks like for me in this season of life and just getting curious about the ways that we seek joy in our lives and how many of us are seeking joy in empty things that leave us feeling worse than when we started.
I love this quest for joy. So, I know you said it's just like a tiny little seed, but can you tell us what you have planned for the future of Quest for Joy?
I believe in the power of speaking your dreams out loud into the world. Okay. So I'm going to be bold and do so, not knowing with any certainty how this is really going to take shape and unfold. When I think about Quest for Joy, I've done a lot of deep diving into this. And if you go onto my computer, I have folders full of potential pitch decks and outlines for what this could be. And as I think about what Quest for Joy is and really what I want the purpose of it to be is is a journey that I take people on as they get curious about what joy looks like and feels like in their own lives, to also get curious about the ways that they've sought it out, maybe in empty places, and maybe ways they can find more authentic joy in their lives. And when I think about how I want to take people along that journey, I've thought about, is Quest for Joy a book? Is it a book that includes stories? Is Quest for Joy a podcast, something people can listen into? Is Quest for Joy a YouTube video series? And I think that right now in my head, if all things were possible, when I imagine what Quest for Joy is, I would love for Quest for Joy eventually to be a docu-series style, where I can take people on this adventure, where they can see themselves in this journey, in this quest for joy, as we navigate joy in all different areas. I'd love for it to be an outlet where I can share my own story, because I think there's so many people who can really, really relate to seeking joy in their lives when it comes to wanting their body to look a certain way. But it got me thinking about how joy shows up for all of us differently. I come from a family, an extended family, who has a long, long history of battling alcoholism. And when I think about that, I think so much of addiction, in whatever form that is, I think a lot of it is rooted in this quest for joy, this seeking for happiness and wanting to find it in these things that can make you instantly feel better, but long-term do not create more joy in your life. And how can we explore really hard things around joy and the dark side of this quest for joy, and also the good sides of it too? When you look at the Declaration of Independence, I should have pulled it up because I do not know it word for word, but it says in the line that we have the right to the pursuit of happiness. We have the right to the pursuit of happiness. And I think it's so interesting that it says that in the Declaration of Independence, because I think it leaves all of us in this place of wanting and seeking and pursuing, but not ever actually feeling. And I think that a lot of us are just on this journey of like, I just want to be more happy. I just want to be more happy. And actually allowing ourselves to be happy, I think is harder than continuing to stay in this pursuit of what happy is. And so in this docu-series, I have this idea that each episode would take us on a different quest. Maybe it's a quest for joy through movement and exercise, right? We learn all about how endorphins can change our mood and how we feel in our body. A quest for joy through things like food and travel and adventure. A quest for joy through things like even getting to talk to a psychologist and a psychiatrist to talk about, like, what does joy even feel like in our brains? Like, what's actually going on chemically when we talk about joy, and really exploring the different things that we are told bring us joy, finding different avenues and strategies and tools to create more joy in our everyday life, and also getting curious about maybe joy happens in unexpected places where we don't think that we'll actually find it.
Well, I am excited for whatever shape Quest for Joy takes as you move forward. But a couple of things that you said, you touched on alcoholism and it being like potentially a quest for joy. And I 100% believe that. I think I have told you that I am a really big Gabor Mate fan of all of his work. And he has a book about addiction. And he, like everyone he interviews who is addicted to alcohol, drugs, behaviors, whatever it is, what that gives them when they partake in whatever it is that they're addicted to is that feeling of warmth and love and joy. And so yes, on that. And then the other thing that you said was feeling emotions and how maybe we don't even know how to feel joy. And I think that is also like you're onto something there. I also wonder if our inability to process negative emotions hinders our ability to feel and process and welcome joy.
1000%. I think that there is so much truth to this. And I think that our capacity to feel hard things influences our capacity to feel good things. I heard someone explain this once, and I love the visual. And she was saying, everything in nature has ups and downs, right? When you think about the waves crashing on an ocean, the waves go up and then they come down. They give and they take, they pull and they push. And when you think about like a heartbeat monitor, right? When you look at a heartbeat monitor, there's ups and there's downs, and there's ups and there's downs. And I think that so many of us, when we're like, I just want to be happy, if you were just happy, if you were just stable constantly on a heartbeat monitor, that would literally mean that you are dead. And I think that you are absolutely correct in that so many of us are trying to numb the hard things in our life, and we use these different tools to numb. Maybe they are things like traditional addictions or even things like social media. Hello, guilty of that. I scroll to numb constantly. We use these things in our lives to numb the hard things that we're trying to avoid and not realizing that it's also numbing our ability to feel the really, really good stuff. And when we think about joy, I don't think that most people think about sorrow in the same breath, like in order for us to feel really, really good and really, really happy, we have to be able to process the really, really heavy things that most of us try to avoid and numb away from entirely.
Mm-hmm. And yeah, I think you're exactly right. I mean, I was that way for a long time until I learned that joy is a supra emotion. It's not an or emotion, it's an and emotion. And you can feel it
Yes.
and anger and sadness and fear. Like joy can be present through it all. And
Yes.
Inside Out is in the theaters right now. It may or may not still be when this podcast airs, but Inside Out 2 is in the theaters. And Inside Out 1, I think, is a great lesson if you're paying attention that you like joy and sadness have to be able to coexist.
Mm-hmm.
Because it's like you're saying, you can't feel the joy if you aren't able to feel and process the sadness.
1000%. One of my favorite people, psychologists, or I guess she's a sociologist, is Brene Brown. If you've ever heard me speak on stage, you know this because I'm pretty sure I quote Brene Brown in every single keynote that I ever give. And she has this book. Oh my gosh, why am I blanking on it? It's one that starts with an A.
Atlas of the Heart.
Thank you. Atlas of the Heart. Atlas of the Heart by Brene Brown is essentially a dictionary for emotions to talk about what all the emotions actually are and how they're related and connected. It's super fascinating. But Brene Brown talks about how joy is actually one of the most vulnerable emotions that we can feel. And she says that a lot of us aren't even aware that we are, she calls it foreboding joy. And the example she gives is, let's say that you are a new mom and you see your newborn little baby child sitting in their crib and you're looking down at this human and you're thinking, oh my gosh, I have never loved something so much. Like my heart is just so full of joy and love. And then in the next moment, your thought is, oh my gosh, what if a car drove through the wall and killed my baby? And how terrifying would that be? And she talks about this as being foreboding joy because joy is one of the most vulnerable emotions that we can feel because it can so instantly be taken away from us. And I think that when we get curious about our capacity to feel joy, like think about when you really allow yourself to feel joy. Do you allow yourself to feel joy? Or in the background, are you always thinking, this is too good? When's the other shoe going to drop? Are you guarding yourself from feeling too good in case something bad happens? Because I think a lot of us are doing this as this protective mechanism, trying to protect our emotions, but it's actually numbing our ability to feel the really, really good things, to really savor those really, really happy moments because we're so afraid that something's going to come and take it away.
Yes. As someone who has been numbing for most of her life, I can say yes. I have struggled to fully feel joy. That's getting better with the work that I've been doing, but yes.
And I think what's so interesting about this concept is, and I feel like it's changing, Taryn, I'm curious what you think, but I feel like our generation, there's this, and maybe this is just my perception because of the people that I surround myself in and the spaces that I'm in and the things that I consume, but I feel like there is this big shift happening now with our generation at this stage and also with the next generations coming up where we're just talking more about emotions. And I feel like emotional intelligence is more of a front of mind. It's more of something that we're actually discussing and learning and fostering because I don't think that when I was being raised that I had zero awareness around really emotions, what they meant, how to feel them, how to process them. It was just more about like, I feel good, happy, or sad. And if I feel sad, I want to change it.
No, I agree. I think that there is a greater awareness and willingness to talk about emotions. And I think that how we got to a place where we weren't talking about emotions and recognizing them is the same way that we're getting out of it. It's generational. So for generations, they didn't talk about it or learn how to process it or learn what emotions were actually trying to tell them. They just, like you said, wanted to change the quote unquote bad emotions to good emotions. But now, slowly, generations have been recognizing, and like our parents' generation did a little bit better than their generation, and ours is doing a little bit better than our parents, and so on and so forth.
Yeah.
And like with anything related to this, it's not going to be like an overnight fix where everybody all of a sudden is emotionally intelligent and recognizes all of this. And it's never going to stay that way. Like it's constant work, because you could so easily fall back into that. Well, it's easier to numb. I mean, I know I could. It's easier to numb than to actually feel and process. So I think you're right.
Yeah. And I know you've mentioned a lot about your own experience, Taryn, about numbing. And I know that that is connected to like our Enneagram types in so many ways. And as an Enneagram 3, which, quick side note, one of my favorite memories with Taryn is we were roommates at the Cultivating Courage conference, the first one in person, Sharon Springs, Kansas, 3 or 4 years ago.
Yeah.
And I was having a full-blown Enneagram crisis because I had mistyped myself. And Taryn she had a hunch that I might have mistyped myself, but she wanted me to like discover it for myself. I had mistyped myself as a 2, and I am a hardcore 3, y'all. I'm a hardcore achiever. I am really, really ambitious. And when I get curious about my own quest for joy in my life and what joy meant, or what I thought joy meant, or how I found joy, was by finding more success, by being seen as successful in more places, by more people, by getting more gold stars, by getting more ribbons, by accomplishing more things, by making more money. And what I've found out more recently in recent years now as an entrepreneur, because as an entrepreneur, there's nobody to tap the brakes for you. I got severely burnt out, and I had to realize this is not joy. This is not actually the thing that I desire. What does success actually look like for me? And giving myself permission to redefine it has been so healing, and is an ongoing journey for me of realizing that achieving does not equal happiness, which is what I thought for most of my life, and redefining what success looks like for me so that I can find more peace, contentment, and joy in my life without attaching it to these metrics that really do not bring those feelings ultimately.
Yeah. And because those things are truly fleeting, like the metrics and the perception of you. And so part of what is hard and also beautiful about self-awareness in the healing journey is that we spend our whole entire lives putting on layers of personality. Your personality is not who you are, it's how you protect yourself. And so you kind of have to peel those protective layers back to get to that. And you've done such a great job of that, and finding what actually brings Kiah joy, not Kiah's personality, or feeding the beast that is the type 3. And so I want to commend you, because I feel like I got in right when it started. In 2017, you were working for the Kentucky Beef Council. And then was it when did you start? When did you read Girl Wash Your Face?
2018. So you've been here for the entire journey.
And it's been so incredibly inspiring and amazing. And I love it. And you're doing great work.
Thank you, friend. I appreciate it. You know, you're so right too about the fleeting thing. And I think there is this term for it in psychology called the arrival fallacy. And I call it the lie of once. And I think that all of us have a flavor of what the lie of once is. Maybe it's, I'll finally be happy. I'll finally feel joy once I lose the weight. That was my story for a long time. Maybe it's, I'll finally feel happy once we own the ranch, once we make a certain amount of money, once we can afford that vacation, once I'm on the beach in Italy, once we have the kids, once I'm in the relationship, whatever the thing is. We all have this different flavor of the lie of once. Once this thing happens, then I'll be happy, then everything will be different. And it's called the arrival fallacy because it's this false notion that we believe a moment in time, a moment of achievement is going to completely change our emotional state and how we feel about ourselves. When, to your point, Taryn, it is a moment in time, right? Standing on a scale and having it read your goal weight or whatever is a moment in time. Having your numbers change in a bank account is a moment in time. Your thoughts, your brain, the way that you feel about yourself is the same. You're the same person. They did this really fascinating study on movie stars and Olympic athletes. And they were looking at their mental health and emotional state before and after they were at the pinnacle of their career. So before and after they won the Oscar, before and after they won the gold medal. And they actually found that they felt worse after reaching the peak of their career because it was all of their life was all building up to this moment. Like, I just want to win. I just want to be an Olympic gold medalist. And once you reach the goal, now what? Now what? If the only thing we had to reach for is reaching the top of the mountain, we are now empty inside and have no purpose and drive because the way that we increase our joy isn't about changing our circumstances and changing a moment in time. I think it's really about changing ourselves from the inside. Like that it is this like internal work that we do that is separate from our circumstances, which is kind of a hard pill to swallow because then it's kind of like, oh crap, it's on me to do this. But it's also really freeing because it's saying that no matter where you live, no matter how much money you make, no matter what your life circumstances are, no matter what your past looked like, you can create more joy in your life because ultimately it's up to you to do from the inside out.
Yes. Yes. And in some cases, it's not so much about changing yourself. It's just about I interviewed Sheila and she talked about her healing journey and how it was like coming back home to herself.
Yes, a homecoming. I love that.
Yeah. And so, I mean, sure, people can change. Our brains can change throughout our lifetime. Like that's science, friends. You can change your mindset throughout your lifetime. Is it harder as you get older? For sure. But you can. But also sometimes we just need to shed things and come back to ourselves.
Yes. It's not necessarily about changing or adding more things or doing things different. It's just about removing the parts of you that aren't actually you and like that deconditioning. And that is hard. And it brings so much self-awareness. And I wonder if you agree with this, Taryn. I think the hardest thing about self-awareness, it is so amazing and so healing. And you can't unsee things anymore. Sometimes I feel like it gets harder before it gets better. And so if you're in that place right now, I just want to make sure that you are not alone, that that's totally normal, that self-awareness can suck sometimes at different parts, but it is so, so worth it. And I think through it, we're able to feel more free. And I love the idea, like Sheila said, of coming home, like this homecoming. I believe that when we're little, in fact, I was thinking that maybe one of the episodes for Quest for Joy would actually be about children, because when we're children, we're born into this world with all of the confidence. We have the capacity to feel intensely, lots of emotions, right? We don't know how to not feel them or express them.
That's the way we communicate. Like literally, our brains are built on emotion.
Exactly. And I think there's so much that we can learn from children. And I think so much of what the work that I've been doing now as an adult, all these years later, is actually learning how to come back home to that younger version of me who was my most authentic self before I started to decide that I needed to mold myself into something different in order for myself to feel like I belonged and to fit into the world and to feel worthy. And I was always worthy. All of us are worthy. And I think so much of this self-awareness and healing journey is coming back home and reminding our 7-year-old, our 15-year-old self that she's worthy and we are allowed to embrace all parts of who they are. And so much of me now being my authentic self is actually realizing I had this epiphany the other day, Taryn, when I was getting ready. I feel like I'm finally finding my like fashion style again. And I love bright, bold colors and like bright, bold patterns. And I put on this dress. It's like this yellow Western dress and it's got all of these ridiculous prints on it. It kind of has like a pinup vibe, but it's like got cowgirls on it and all these things. And I looked at myself in the mirror and I'm like, I look so familiar. And I pulled up a picture of myself when I was younger and I was in this bright yellow jumpsuit covered in all of these bright floral flowers. And I was like, oh, maybe me finding my personal style as an adult is actually just realizing that I like the same things that I liked to wear when I was a little kid.
Yeah. Did you share that? I feel like I saw that on your Instagram
I think
stories.
I shared it on my Instagram stories. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, and so much of the healing work that I have been doing over this last year is actually going back to childhood. So, I mean, it's not shocking to me that you're finding out all these things that I liked when I was a little kid, like I still like them. That's who I
Turns out
am.
I still like them. Yes. And it's like, because that was the version of me that wasn't trying to please anyone. She was just existing and doing the things that made her happy. And along the way, a lot of us have forgot how to just exist and do the things that make us happy, separate from what they, the capital T, they, whoever they are, whatever they think. And we water ourselves down to become more palatable for who, for what. And I think that the saddest thing, and I think there was someone that said this quote, and I'm sorry that I don't know who it is, but it was the most heartbreaking thing is getting to the end of your life and realizing you lived the wrong one. And I think this journey that I'm on, and I think what I would love to do with this project of Quest for Joy, in whatever form it takes, is taking people on this journey so that they can have more self-discovery, so that they can remember who they are before it's too late, so they can live more their authentic selves before they get to their end of their life and feel like they lived the wrong one.
I love that so much. So you have been on your own quest of joy, quest
Yeah.
for joy. How has that, because we talk a lot about communication and all of the things here on the Good Movement Draws Good Movement podcast and just drawing good movement in general, but how have you seen your own discovery of joy growing, like drawing more joy, like that good movement draws good movement?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think my first reaction to that question is when I do believe that joy is infectious. And I think that there is something about the energy that we exude out to other people when we are around them. It can influence them, whether it's good energy or negative energy. And I think that when we are able to tap into our own joy and our own authentic selves, I think what we do when we exist in the world with other people in community is that we give them permission to do the same. And in my own quest for joy, it's been so interesting to continue to peel back these layers because even as Coach Kiah, this personal brand as an entrepreneur, I have changed and evolved so much since I first started doing this work. And I officially, I guess, started as Coach Kiah. My first coaching client, which was not public, I wasn't even coaching publicly, was back in 2019. So for 5 years, I feel like I don't want to say that I feel like a different person, but I feel like a different version of myself now, more authentic to who I am now. I'm still removing the things that aren't me. And I think that when we are able to do that and be more our authentic selves, people are like, I see that in you and I want that for myself. And it's been really, really cool to basically open up the doors to welcome people in to work with me for their own self-discovery. And that brings me so much joy to be able to do this work on ourselves and then share that work with other people to help them remove the layers. I just think has been the most rewarding aspect of this. And to be able to witness that in other people, to witness other people finding their joy, I just think it continues to compound. And I think that the ripple effects of our own joy go so much further than we will ever see. And I think I've seen that to be true for myself. But it's interesting, Taryn. It's ever evolving. And I feel like I'm going to continue to pull back these layers for the rest of time. And I'm excited about that at the same time. I feel like we have all this pressure to like know who you are. And it's not that I don't know who I am, but I'm committed to continuing to get to know me because the more that we experience, the more that we learn, the more that we grow and we have different interests and they change and we meet new people. And I just want to continue to constantly be on this, yes, quest for joy, but this quest for self-discovery. And also kind of going back to what we talked about at the beginning is realizing that a quest for joy is also the courage and bravery to feel everything that's not joy at the same time. And something recently in my life, it sounds so funny to me to say out loud, but I've been talking more about it. And something that I'm really exploring lately in my life is rage, which sounds like the opposite of joy. But what I realized was I don't think I've ever really allowed myself to be angry, like really angry. And I think that not allowing myself to ever feel angry, there's like some untapped potential rooted within that lack of space for anger and rage. And I've been like, okay, what would happen if I allowed myself to feel rage? And I say this not being like, I'm not going to rage on other people. I'm not trying to like, project it outwardly to hurt other people, but to get more curious about the things that I'm angry about and create space for myself to feel that anger. I think a lot of us as women, we're taught that we can be sad, but we can't be mad. And men can feel mad, but they can't feel sad. And I very much had that like good girl mentality of like, I just want everyone to be happy. I want to get the gold star. I want to be a good daughter. I want to be a good friend. And being angry doesn't help you be those things, And so I never really allowed myself the space. And I don't know if it's pregnancy hormones. I'm pregnant right now, which is really exciting because by the time this podcast comes out, everyone's going to know publicly. But as we're recording this, it is not public information. I think the pregnancy hormones have really helped me tap into my rage. Maybe that's part of it. And maybe it's also knowing that I'm about to bring a child into this world where I'm like, what are the things about this world that I find it really, really hard to tolerate that I want to make different for the child that I bring into this space? And I actually think that allowing myself to feel really angry and feel really rageful has actually increased my capacity to feel joy. And we normally wouldn't think that. But to your point, Taryn, in order to feel the good stuff, we have to give ourselves space to feel the hard stuff. And so I'm in this space right now in my own self-discovery of like, okay, what would it feel like to like allow myself to feel the quote unquote bad emotions, which I don't think there's any bad emotions. I think all emotions are here to serve us in some way. But because I had labeled them as bad for so long, I just like locked them in a closet and was like, we don't address these, but I'm opening up the closets and we are exploring all sorts of things.
You're going to air that closet out.
Oh, we're going to air it all out.
More musty, mildewy closet full of, like you said, quote unquote, bad emotions.
Yeah.
I love that. And I love that I got to know that you were pregnant. And it's so exciting. Also, I love that you're like leaning into that and recognizing that the pregnancy hormones are helping you tap into this sort of uncharted emotional water.
Yeah.
Because I do believe that in order to feel joy to its fullest, we have to be able to feel all of the emotions to their fullest. So I love that you're leaning into that. And that's like another part of self-awareness is recognizing that, oh, you know what? My hormones are changing and it is giving me rage.
A lot of rage. And it's been interesting to think about like how to process different tools for processing different emotions, right? Like even tools for allowing ourselves to feel joy, right? Like that's something that some of us need to learn as well. But the other day I was on a flight and I had this conversation on social media. I was asking people about how they felt about weight loss ads, what feels like an increase to me. I asked people about how they felt about like cosmetic procedures like fillers and Botox and things like that. And I asked people what they wanted their relationship with their body to be like with when they aged. And I got so many responses, Taryn, and all across the board, so many different perspectives and people who loved them and they felt more confident and they loved these abilities to like make these changes so they could feel good and look more like themselves, what felt like themselves. And there were some people who were so frustrated by them. And everyone said that they wanted to like be at peace and feel good in their body as they continued to age, because what a gift it is to age. But I was sitting on a flight and so I couldn't like look anything up or distract myself or numb away from the rage by scrolling social media. And I just like felt this rage boiling up in me because I was like, how just insane and asinine is it how much time and money and energy women have spent for our entire lives focused on what we look like, how to change it, if we should change it, what other people are doing to change it, if we are messing up for not changing it. Just, it's insane. And it made me just so, so angry. And I couldn't numb in any of my normal ways on that flight. And so I channeled it into a poem. And so I wrote this poem and I posted it on my Instagram. You might have to scroll back a little bit now, but it's called Botox at 2. And it's not in any way to judge anybody who chooses to use like fillers or Botox or not. Like that's not the purpose of the poem. The purpose of the poem is just to illuminate all of the unspoken messages that we have received growing up and how we believe about our bodies, and also the unspoken messages that we are perpetuating to the next generation of little girls because we continue to stay caught in the same grips, in the same system through our actions. And Again, I think part of it is because I'm pregnant. I don't know at this stage as we're recording if I'm going to have a little girl or a little boy, but it just made me so angry to think, no, I don't want them to feel the way that I've felt most of my life. How do we fix this? And I don't know the answer to that, but I just think the more questions we ask ourselves, the better off we'll be.
I missed Botox at 2, but I'm going to have to scroll back and
I can read
see.
it to you if you want me to.
Yeah, do it, please.
Okay. So this is Botox at 2. A changing body is unacceptable and utterly absurd. That's what we're saying so loud without words. Dear child, you're perfect. You don't need a thing. That is until one day when you'll soon look like me. Avoid it at all costs to your wallet or mind. I'd be lying if I told you that all will be fine. Too soon you'll believe, just as I do. How could you not after all you see me do? You need to be less and in some ways perhaps more. No matter your insides, your outsides keep score. So chin up, tits out, and keep your waist thin. Take a needle to your face to hide lines from your grin. Maybe plump a bit here and suck it in there. And for heaven's sake, don't forget to color your hair. Question yourself when you dress for the day. Account for every calorie that dare comes your way. Love yourself. Of course, you're beautiful after all, but only for now until your skin starts to fall. Your worthiness withers with each passing day. You'll start hating yourself now and it won't go away. Forget all your dreams. Let them fall to the side. Unless you look perfect, you may as well hide. If you finally accept yourself, they'll say you let yourself go. And what they think is important, life is all a show. Savoring the moment is silly when there's so much to do. That's all for now. I have my next Botox at 2.
Oh my gosh. That is like, I'm chuckling, but not because it's funny, but because it's just, holy shit, Kiah. So true.
Yeah. And I don't know. I think that it felt like a productive way to channel my rage, just to get curious, right? And maybe I'll write more poetry. Maybe I won't. I'm not going to put any pressure on myself, but I think that it comes back down to this self-awareness, but also this collective self-awareness about our society and the messages we've received and also the messages we're continuing to send out, whether we are knowingly doing so or not. And yeah, maybe part of my Quest for Joy series is also this desire to leave people with better questions for themselves. Just leave people with better questions about how they experience joy in their own lives, how they avoid emotions in their own lives. And I think that that's the thing is I feel like none of us have the answer. And I think that all of us want an answer for all sorts of things.
Mm-hmm.
But I think that really the way that we change the game is just by asking ourselves better questions and getting more curious.
Yes. I mean, if you're a longtime listener to this podcast, you know how much I love and value a good, honest question. And that is what Kiah talks about a lot is compassionate curiosity and asking better questions. So yes. Well, Kiah, I have so much enjoyed this conversation and we could probably talk for, a long time more if we wanted to, but I think we better wrap it up here. So will you please tell listeners where they can find you online? And as always, we will link to these in the show notes, but just, give them verbally where they can find you.
Absolutely. First, I just want to celebrate you, listener, for being here and listening into Taryn's podcast. I think that already shows so much about you being curious about yourself and about the world, and just celebrating you for showing up here in this space and continuing to get curious about your own life, because again, the ripple effects from that are going to go farther than you think. So just want to give you a quick shout out, but I would love to connect with you if you resonated with any of this conversation. I am online. CoachKiah.com is my website. If for any reason you'd ever want to explore coaching with me in any capacity, there's a coaching application where we can chat a little bit more. But in terms of social media, I'm in most of the places, Facebook, Instagram. Instagram is probably my favorite place to hang out. I am Coach_Kiah. That's Kiah. And since I know you like podcasts, I do have a podcast. It's called Climbing with Coach Kiah. Taryn has been a guest on the show. It has been paused for a bit, but there is some good nuggets to go back and listen to if you want to check that out too.
Thank you again, Kiah. I have really enjoyed this conversation, and who knows, maybe when Quest for Joy takes shape, we'll have you back to talk more about it.
Let's manifest that.
Yeah, I just really appreciate you being here.
Thanks, friend.
Until next time, draw good movement. Thanks so much for tuning in. I'm so grateful for you. If you found value in this episode, I'd love for you to share with others who might also benefit from tuning in. Share by word of mouth, send it in a text, take a screenshot and post it on social media, or share however you prefer. And if you haven't already, hit the follow or subscribe button so you never miss an episode. Until next time, draw good movement.